Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is the big movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie No-Tell Motel. So, this movie is your kind of quite generic horror film, but doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad film. So, it tells the story of 5 friends going on a road trip. Now, before I get started, I just want to kind of go off the reservation a little bit. And I always say with these films, we have kind of like an odd number that always tends to be like, for example, in this one, 2 couples and then a single person. What single person would go on a holiday with 2 couples? But it happens every time in these films. I just don't know. You would either have like 2 couples and maybe 2 other sort of male friends or 2 other female friends. But who the hell is going to want to go on this if you're a single person? Go on the holiday with 2 other couples. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out there because I see this in films so many times. I just think, hell, I wouldn't go on a holiday if it was just me and 2 other couples or however. But there you go. Anyway, so back to the actual plot. So you get these 5 people going on a road trip, and as you'd expect in this sort of film, they kind of get detoured on these back roads and end up having an accident and having to sort of spend the night in this old dilapidated motel. Now we see in the prologue of this film that there was an accident where a young girl got hit by a car in this same hotel, but that's all we're really told about it. Now this hotel is pretty scummy and run down. Looks like it hasn't obviously been occupied for a very, very long time. Not long after, one of the party gets hit down by their own drunk driver, and she's ultimately killed. And they sort of bring this drunk driver into the actual motel, and then from there, basically, you kind of there's spooky goings on. Obviously, like you'd expect. The party is sort of forced apart and sort of obviously end up wandering around on their own and sort of having ghostly encounters with what it turns out to be a family of ghosts. Most notably, the ghost of the young girl who was killed in the prologue, and this little blonde girl called Angela. And they're kind of angry ghosts, and don't really know why they're kind of taking it out so much on the living, but we just have to assume that they're angry ghosts. And you have various death scenes. The thing here is each of these sort of 5 sort of individuals, these 5 kids, all have their secrets. Each one of them has got their own sort of specific secret that they're sort of keeping from the rest of them, and that kind of plays into the sort of the theme of it. Now I won't go too much further into the plot other than that, but okay. So let's have a look at the positives and negatives of this film. So the positives of this film, I would say it's fairly well shot. It is fairly it does have a quite fairly good creepy vibe. I don't think the acting's too bad either, I have to say. I mean, normally with these cheaper B movies, the acting is quite often down the drain, especially when you have a young cast. But I wouldn't say I'm not saying it's the best acting I've ever seen, but it was perfectly adequate, and I don't have any problems with it. The acting for this sort of style of film, cheapy throwaway horror film. So no problem with the acting. It does have the sort of creepy vibe. The actual motel is kind of a quite a good sort of creepy setting. The music's quite well good, and it's fairly well shot and everything. On the negative side of things, this film is pretty much generic as you can expect. There's nothing really just is going to surprise you, I don't think. It does at the end try to have a little bit of a twist, but to be honest with you, you kind of expect it. And what actually happens isn't a massive surprise, to be honest with you, because if you kind of you can kind of guess there's something else sort of going on at work anyway. I won't go into too much what it in, but all the characters are fairly sort of fairly cliche, fairly one-dimensional. You've got the sort of the jock. You've kind of got the the innocent girl. That sort of thing. Doesn't necessarily make it a bad film. It just makes it sort of very unoriginal. Now I think the problem is that with this sort of time, you have a lot of these films that are more sort of self-aware, like Cabin in the Woods, and sort of takes the piss of the genre a little bit. So when you have a film that really sort of sits on its laurels and has these cliches, it kind of almost sticks out that little bit more. I think if you were to watch this film and really hadn't watched a lot of horror films before, you'd probably get a bit more out of it than you would if you're a keen horror fan, because I don't think you're going to find a lot of originality here. It isn't a particularly gory film. There's there are, like I said, there's some moderate scares, but nothing I don't think that a seasoned horror fan is going to sort of like bulk at really. There's not a lot in the way of special effects. You know, the sort of ghostly girl who just looks like you know, a young actress with a sort of like bit of makeup on. But you know, who's to say what a ghostly girl would actually look like? So I have to say, I won't tell you what it is, but if I have a look at the actual the ending of this film, I don't think the ending the very ending kind of made all of that much sense, to be honest with you. It just seemed to go off on a tangent to try and leave you on this like, oh my god, sort of like sort of almost cliffhanger ending. But to me, I didn't really understand why it kind of went that way as well. Okay, I'm going to go through and do a spoiler bit in just a second, because I kind of wanted to make one point with it. But I'll tell you when that's been. So if you haven't seen it, you're okay for now. But it does have this kind of like, almost like a bit of a double twist at the end. One of them you can see coming. The other one that I think is just confusing. So I'm going to give this film a 5 out of 10, purely because I just think it's not a bad film. It's not badly made, but it's very generic, very average. So I'm going to hit it bang on 5 out of 10 for an average rating. Right. I just want to say one thing. So there's going to be a spoiler from this point onwards. Now, at the end of it, we're told that kind of like we're down to 2 people, and that the kind of like the innocent girl who's sort of the pregnant one, and the guy who ultimately raped her. And I thought it would have been better if you actually had the point where she almost forgave the guy who raped her, because ultimately, you know, he's going to, in these films, you know that someone who had done something like that is ultimately going to get it. So we just know he's not going to make it out there alive. So the final twist where we sort of see him tied up on the sort of like the bench, and she sort of leaves him. I thought, well, you know, that wasn't a surprise. That wasn't a good twist. What would have been more interesting, the fact is, you know, he actually, no, he's not an innocent, but if he actually was one of the people that actually got out of there alive, that would actually make it that much more original, especially if she sort of, maybe not completely forgave him, but sort of, you know, ultimately he did try and help sort of save her life at the end, but it still would have been interesting if maybe they had got out together, love it, so they can deal with that whole rape situation, you know, in their own time or whatever. But that's how I would have think it would have been more interesting to actually let a character who wasn't a particularly one of the sort of the good characters survive, along with the sort of obviously the innocent character. So that's just my opinion. I didn't really like that sort of quite a cliched ending to it. Anyway, so 5 out of 10, that's my mark. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.